You, I feel like
the Edmonton Oilers are in trouble again. How does this keep happening when they have a superstar like Connor McDavid? We take a look at how teams screw it up, even with generational talents. That as a cautionary tale for also an NFL preview, NFL draft preview, as Couch Potato Diary Live starts now. Welcome to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Thursday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in to the program here today. Coming up on this show, we have a bit of a change to how we're doing this one today. A lot of times with the show, I do we'll go through each sport, do a breakdown of what the biggest stories, biggest things catching my attention, and all of that. This one is going to be kind of the closest to like a talk radio segment that I will do here. Because I have just a thought or eight on what has gone on with the Edmonton Oilers and just kind of an overall sports look right now. So that is kind of the crux of today, is how are these teams getting the thing that you want, the superstar that you want at the end of the tanking rainbow. They are getting these guys and still not doing enough with them. So we will take a look at the pitfalls that teams fall into with the superstars that they are able to acquire in one way, shape, or form. So we got that little bit of NFL draft talk too coming at you. A reminder that we are presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag. Also, we are fueled by Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for that 25% off. Deeds is already in the Twitch chat. we are discussing how we're doing today, and I think this one kind of sums up how a lot of people out here where I'm at in Calgary are feeling. Why are we nothing short of spectacular after another Oilers loss? Yes, no, we are definitely enjoying ourselves out here in Calgary with that, and so let's dive into this. I know I can already feel some hackles up for Oilers fans and stuff like that. I think you're going to be on my side on this one, even though maybe I'm taking a touch more enjoyment in what's going on out there than maybe you would be doing. But yeah, let's break this all down with a new segment called What's on My Mind. So, what is on my mind is the Edmonton Oilers somehow continue to screw this up with Connor McDavid. I don't know how. I do know how, but I just, it boggles the mind how they, how they can get the generational talent of all generational talents and still have so much trouble putting together a Stanley Cup contending caliber hockey team out on the ice at any given time. It boggles the mind, really, when you see that. So today, going to run through, because they are not the only ones that this happens to, right? Going to run through how teams continue to mess up, even though they have the star player. Because that is, and look, we're talking about it. I'm based here in Calgary, talking about rebuilds and stuff like that. It is one thing to do the rebuild. And okay, we've got it locked in. Let's go. But there's a lot that comes with that. And so you have to have a plan still. And gonna run through how teams continue to screw this up. And there are a couple of examples of it right now. One of which is happening in front of our eyes out in Edmonton, as the Oilers are now down 2-0 in their series with the Los Angeles Kings. The other is not quite as dramatic, I guess, not quite as drastic as what is happening out in Edmonton, because they do have a championship that they can hang on to. But the Denver Nuggets have one of the the unicorn type player that you could build a franchise around. And they got to the promised land and won a championship. But post-title, I have hated how they have handled it. And even with winning a championship, it still feels like they are wasting an amazing talent in Nikola Jokić. So we're going to look at, again, how these teams fall into that. So reason number one why teams can get a superstar and still screw it up is general incompetence. And now that, I believe, is what has happened in Edmonton for the entirety of Connor McDavid's career. Now, the good thing, Oilers fans, and I want to be abundantly clear in this whole thing here. The one thing I am not doing in this segment is blaming the Stars for any of this. I haven't watched one Oilers game the past half decade and thought, you know what? This one's on McDavid. This one's on him. I think you could do a segment of like superstars who aren't living up to it. And I am going to, at some point in this, mention the Toronto Maple Leafs. I do think, for the most part, a lot of the pitfalls that have befallen that team. I don't know if I said any of that right, but I do think a lot of the issues that team has had has kind of come down to their best players haven't been their best players when the games have meant the most. And so that is certainly a part of this. That is not the part of it out in Edmonton. When you look at the playoff run that dude had a season ago, you can't blame him for 1 second of any of the problems out in Edmonton. Also, I should note that the second I hit start streaming today, they started doing some work on the roof. So if you're hearing some people hammering, it's not because the folks up in Edmonton are so furious at my thoughts that they are coming in and trying to break through. It's just apparently today was the day at 11 o'clock that construction needed to happen. So anyway, back to the rant. The number one reason why teams fail, even after getting a superstar, is general incompetence. And so when you look at the Edmonton Oilers, how did the Edmonton Oilers get Connor McDavid? They got Connor McDavid by being really terrible and winning a draft lottery. Not just one draft lottery, though. A comical amount of draft lotteries before they got to that diamond in the rough that is Connor McDavid. And so you don't get there by being awesome. And generally, your lack of awesomeness can also come down to a lack of competency when it comes to certain front offices. Now, there is an art to rebuilding for sure, and some do it quite well. we will later, a little bit later, look at another example from that draft year of a team that did it really badly and has not been able to come out of it since, and you already know who I'm going to be talking about with that. But for the Oilers fans, the good part about this is that this is the easiest one to fix. You know, it's tough to fix cheap. It is tough to fix salary cap woes. It ain't tough to fix stupid. You just get less stupid. And that is, I think, probably if I could give one bit of advice to Edmonton front offices over the years and now to this current one, it would be less stupid. Because that solves a lot of the problems in Edmonton, to be perfectly honest with you. If they were just not as dumb about managing a team as they were with this, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. And I would just be talking about hockey games that happened last night. So let's take a look at it. So they win the draft lottery. Connor McDavid is there. And so their thought is, well, we need a real hockey guy to run this. Someone who has done it before, which, if there is one cursed phrase in the entirety of messed up stardom and messed up builds of teams, it is guy who has done it before. Because, well, I do think there is a value in having experience and having people who know how to win. I do believe that's a skill in sports. Sometimes you need to look at the how, and Edmonton didn't when they hired Peter Chiarelli as their general manager. Now, the timeline on it, if I am correct, they sucked, they win the draft lottery, and then they hire Chiarelli. There's a little bit to, oh, well, they hired Chiarelli before they drafted McDavid. Yes, but if I'm not mistaken, they hired him after they won the draft lottery. I think my timeline is right on that. It was 10 years ago. But I feel like I'm right on that. Either way, it's close. So they bring in Peter Chiarelli, who had the wonderful fortune of being a general manager at a time when Zdeno Chara became a free agent for no good goddamn reason, and had the foresight to draft Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand. So while, yes, built an excellent team that teams would still model themselves after decades later, it should be high on the mantle for Peter Chiarelli. But what he did in Edmonton was not great. And it was one of the classic things. Okay, we got this kid in here. We need veterans who can protect him. So let's get Milan Lucic. Well, does Lucic's style fit with Connor McDavid's? Not even a little bit, but let's roll with them anyway. Cool, great, awesome. Let's do that then. Okay, it didn't work. Let's trade it for James Neal. Sure, okay. Does his style work? A little bit better, but not quite anyway still. Okay, fine. And then, so obviously the Chiarelli era didn't work in Edmonton. So what do? Do they bring in a bright young mind who can really help take this team into the future and really maximize what you have in Connor McDavid? Well, none of that described Ken Holland, who they then brought in, who again had a miraculous run as the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. Reminder, most of that happened pre-salary cap, although some very good teams put together post-salary cap. But again, a little bit of that is you just happened to draft Datsuk and Zetterberg in, I think one of them was an 8th round pick, which doesn't exist anymore. So that helps. But still, credit for building those teams. But what he did with Connor McDavid, it didn't help either. And so the biggest pitfall for this Edmonton team, I gotta stop saying pitfall, but the biggest pitfall for this Edmonton team was they just hired the wrong people. And that has been a perpetual problem out in Edmonton, right? Like that is evergreen statement, if there ever was one, that the Edmonton Oilers Old Boys Club hasn't done the best job of hiring. And now they have brought in a new cat, and maybe that will work. I do think that he doesn't get a lot of the, not blameless for what's happening in Edmonton right now, but he doesn't get a ton of the blame because he does come in after a lot of the moves were made. But there is no question, even post Ken Holland, this team had an atrocious offseason. When you look at not addressing the goaltending situation, which you can kind of explain away because Stuart Skinner did take you to within a game of winning the Stanley Cup a season ago. But you still don't necessarily look at that and go, oh no, this is going to be repeatable. We had to pull him at some point in the playoffs, but this is going to be repeatable. To not address that, to lose so much of the scoring depth that really did let you go from good to great. And replacing it with, again, some tired veterans that haven't really worked and were never going to fit what you were doing, and then to just blissfully ignore the defensive problem on your team for the 8th time in the last 9 years. Cool, great, awesome. That's how you get in the situation you are in, where you're down 2-0 and you've looked good for exactly 1 period of this series so far. That's the type of building that gets you there. So again, it is the general incompetence that has put this team in the position they are in. Just a reminder, and again, none of this is to blame McDavid, but this is the Oilers' resume with this unbelievable talent. He is, as again, you can't see all the gray in the beard, but there's some in there. As a 35-year-old who has been watching this sport since I was 2, Connor McDavid is without a question the most talented hockey player I've ever seen in my life. We can get into greatness, whatever, blah, blah, blah. If Wayne Gretzky was in this era, I'm sure he'd be doing the same shit. But for what these eyeballs have seen on people on ice at a professional level, this kid's the most talented I have ever seen. And honestly, it's not particularly close when you're looking at high level versus high level. Like, his high end is better than anyone's has ever been. And this is what they have done with him. You know it is serious when I've brought the notebook out. 2015-16, his first year, missed the playoffs. He got hurt. 17, lost in the second round. 17-18, missed the playoffs. 18-19, missed the playoffs. 19-20, lost in the qualifying round. I forgot, like, I knew it wasn't great. I forgot how long it took for them to get any sort of winning out of this thing, which is bananas when you think about having that dude on an entry-level contract and still not getting anything out of it. That is in the Mediocrity Hall of Fame. That is naming the Mediocrity Hall of Fame after you. Anyway, we continue. 2020-21, swept in the first round. 2021-22, swept, but in the Western Conference Final. So they get there, finally. Okay, this is the progression. This is the start of it. Here we go. 2022-23, lost in the second round. Is that right? Yeah, lost in the second round. 23-24, lost in the Stanley Cup Final. And now this year, it really seems like, and a lot of things can change, but this year, it really seems like it is going to be lost in the first round. The Kings are a vastly superior hockey team to this group right now. And so looking at it, let's not project, because look, they got McDavid. They could rattle off 4 wins just like that, and this team would be that good. Like, they got the guy who can be that good and do that thing. So they could rattle off 4 straight wins, and this whole segment just kind of goes away, and we get a lot of notes in the comments of, and then what? But to recap, that is 7 playoff series wins in 9 years for Connor McDavid. Simply not good enough. Simply not good enough. That number should be, the number of series wins should be higher than the number of seasons that he has played. And we can't go back and re-legislate what they did in 17-18 or anything like that, but you are with him right now and still not getting these things done. It is mind-boggling. Just a couple of frames of reference here. And again, this is not a knock on the players. This is how organizations are built. But the Pittsburgh Penguins, in the first 9 years with Sidney Crosby, they won 12 playoff series, including a Stanley Cup. And so, like, 5 is a not insignificant number when you only get 4 cracks at it every year, right? And then when you lose one, it's all done, right? So 12-7 seems kind of wild. Here is the one that that got me. Jack Eichel with the Buffalo Sabres played in exactly 0 playoff series. He still is at 4 playoff series wins in the last 9 years. Now, all of those came in 1 playoff series or 1 playoff run, but still, if they win the Stanley Cup this year and Edmonton goes out in the first round, a lot has to happen between now and then. But if that happens, then despite having a 6-year head start on making the playoffs, Eichel will have won more playoff series than Connor McDavid. And 0% of that is a failure of Connor McDavid. All of it is on how the Edmonton Oilers have run their front office. The other, just astonishing part of this whole thing is that in this time, with Connor McDavid having won, again, 7 playoff series in 9 seasons, the Oilers have used a first-round pick 8 times. That itself is too many times. You have the best player in the world. What fucks do I give about 3 years down the road, and oh well, maybe we'll get a good, maybe this kid can help out in a few seasons. Anyway, we just got swept by the Jets in the first round, but we got that guy, so it's gonna be great. Everything is gonna be fine. And now, I would listen to arguments that that was smart team management if any of them worked out. But of those 8 draft picks, right now, one of them is playing on the Edmonton Oilers, and Spectre wrote a piece 2 days ago talking about trading his ass. That would be Evan Bouchard. Puljujarvi, gone. Yamamoto, gone. Broberg, see ya. Holloway, blue. Even Bourgault, I'm not saying that right, but that kid, gone already. Flipped him out of there. So if you are hell-bent on trying to draft while in the first round, well, you have generational talent Connor McDavid, and none of this is even bringing up the fact that they got another one in Draisaitl. But if you want to continue to try to hit on these things, you sure as shit better get it right. And so I shouldn't be able to go through and look at, oh well, hey, yeah, Puljujarvi. Now that is revisionist history because I thought Puljujarvi was going to be good. But taking Puljujarvi 2 picks ahead of Matthew Tkachuk seems like a miss. Now, Yamamoto, I'm sure we could go through and pick through a couple of those ones as well. But if you are going to do that, you best not screw it up. And the Oilers have screwed it up. And so that is why they are in the situation that they are in at this point. It is general incompetence. And now again, for Oilers fans, that's the good part, because that is the easiest one to fix. Just get less stupid, and maybe you'll be able to figure it out. Reason number 2, where teams tend to fall apart here, is well, you know what? We have the best player. He'll make everyone better. And so because of that, we can manage our salary cap in this sort of a way. Now, this one is a little bit more defensible in certain sports. Hockey would be one of them. But it is still a very poor way of going about it. And the most recent example of this is the Denver Nuggets. And now again, they are in a different situation than the Edmonton Oilers are because they won a championship very recently. But you have a unicorn on your team, the best passing big man in the history of the sport, and will go down as one of the most talented big men in the history of the sport, and just one of the most talented humans to ever play in the NBA. And all they have done since winning that title is lose piece after piece after piece after piece. Who wouldn't want to play with a pass first big man who can average a triple double and be the best player on the floor? Like, that sounds like a dream to play with. And still, it is KCP out the door, Bruce Brown out the door. All these bench pieces that they had that were key parts of a championship run, they have left because this team didn't want to pay for them. And now, the basketball CBA currently, with all the different aprons and stuff, have made it a little bit more difficult than it was in the past to just keep guys around your star players. But there are still ways to do this. There is still a trade deadline when you can go out and make a couple of acquisitions so you're not taking the brunt of that salary on and still be able to get some depth pieces around. Also, there's a buyout period where like just people flock to championship caliber teams all the time for very cheap out of these. And Denver hasn't been able to do any of it, really. And so this is where a lot of teams make these mistakes in salary cap worlds. And again, part of it is out of necessity because you have a star player, you pay star player money, all of a sudden you have less money to spend elsewhere. So heaven forbid, you gotta do your job well. And look, they hit on Christian Brown, that's great. And they still have a solid 4 around Jokić with Brown. Jamal Murray, when healthy. Gordon, I think, is the perfect fit to play with Jokić, and MPJ, who had a really strong game in a losing effort in Game 2 against the Clippers. So they have still been able to do that, but as the extra pieces to take some of the pressure off and to just kind of help out a little bit with this group that they have done an exceptionally poor job at in the last couple of seasons. And now the Russell Westbrook thing, we talked about him after Game 1. You got the highs and lows of that experience, but they just have not done a good enough job And it is just this assumption from what can be at times cheap owners in just saying, well, we're not going to pay into any kind of luxury tax or anything like that. We got Jokić. He can just make everyone around him better. We don't need whatever. And I do think that depth conversations can be overblown in the NBA at times. Like, I remember, we brought this up the other day, the Raptors bench mob. And, oh man, this is one of the deepest teams in the NBA. How are they not going to? LeBron played 45 minutes last night and crushed them. And now it's LeBronto, and the Wikipedia page is being changed. So, cool. Depth stuff can be overblown a little bit, but you still have to surround your star players with talent. We are not at a point in sports anymore, really, where just one guy can do it all. When was the last time we had that in the NBA? Even like when Giannis won the title, it was basically just Giannis, but they have a good supporting cast around him. You look at the Raptors with Kawhi, like obviously he was the star, but you look at the amount of players on that team that stepped up, and they basically, in one of the rare nice things Russillo will say about the Toronto Raptors, he was right though in pointing out, they basically could just put out no bad players. And so for 48 minutes, you don't get that, oh, thank God, this guy is out there now. You still have to build a championship caliber roster. It just gets more difficult when you have that guy around. And I think too many times teams will just have their superstar player and be like, oh, done. Great. We're in a really good spot here. Another example of this is out in Kansas City. And again, they've won championships. And so this one isn't as dire as what happened out in Edmonton, but you look at the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. He signs a gigantic contract, and that means you have to penny pinch in different places. The problem is not that Kansas City had to penny pinch, it's where Kansas City decided to pinch those pennies, and that would be on the offensive line. And I do think there is, with him and with Jokić as well, there is a little bit of a thought of, well, look, this guy is so good that we don't offensive line, he has an amazing escapability. He can just roll around, get away, and throw it downfield, and off it goes. And okay, that's great until you get to the Super Bowl. And it does seem like we are kind of splitting hairs here because we are talking about a post-championship build for the Nuggets. And we are talking about a in the Super Bowl failure for the Kansas City Chiefs. But this is the area you now live in when you have these superstar players. It is not enough to have 7 playoff series wins in 9 years when you are allowed to, when you are allowed to win 4 of them a season. That's not enough. When you are talking about a Nikola Jokić, quite frankly, if we are talking about Nikola Jokić only having 1 NBA championship, even considering the amount of talent in the NBA right now, that is a bordering on catastrophic failure of an organization. For the Kansas City Chiefs, there's no way you can say they have failed Patrick Mahomes, although I do think they did last year. And again, when you have one of the greatest of all time, you should be banner after banner after banner after banner should be hung up with your team. And so, yes, it is a little nitpicky to say, well, they screwed up in the Super Bowl, but them's the breaks when you got generational talents, is that those are supposed to be Super Bowl wins. And because of their penny pinching in the salary cap and trying to manage things a certain way, they did not give Mahomes the time to face a very, very good defense in Philadelphia, and he then didn't have the receivers to get open quick enough to do that. And so that is part of the struggle when you have a guy making a lot of money. But this is still, again, kind of the barrier of entry. When you have those guys, it's then you have to surround them with pieces that they can make better. And there are just some situations that are just unwinnable in that sort of a way, and it ends up costing you. So that is the other way that another way that teams kind of fail with the Stars is that, well, we're up against the salary cap, so we can trim, and this guy's just good enough that he can just take whatever and run with it. Another example of this is the Patriots. And again, no one's going to look back at the Patriots dynasty and be like, man, some missed opportunities there. But you look at that middle stretch. We've talked on here before about how you can break Tom Brady's career up into 2 Hall of Fame careers. But there is a middle chunk in there where they didn't do a lot in terms of Super Bowl wins. Again, making the playoffs every year and all of that. But there was a stretch in there where it wasn't happening. And now what was the reason for that? Well, Deion Branch was the best receiver he had for the first decade of his career. Which, overstating that timeline a little bit, but still, every year, it was, well, we have the best quarterback in the world, so who gives a fuck who he's thrown to? Let's just go out and make our defense elite. Let's focus on these areas and not give him anything to work with at all. And that gets you to NFC Championship games, but that has you losing to Baltimore. That has you losing to Indianapolis. That has you losing to Denver. That has you losing to all these high-level teams. So then, look at that. Okay, we maybe need to get him a little bit of help. So let's get a gift from the Oakland Raiders and bring in Randy Moss. And hey, look at that. We get him a high-level player, and we have the best offense in the history of the sport. Okay. Well, that's good. We still lost in the Super Bowl, but that's fine. Let's get him a little bit more help, though, shall we? How about two incredibly athletic tight ends, one we don't talk about anymore, and let's nail it on Julian Edelman here. Hey, let's get him like the exact type of receivers that would work with his style. And hey, look at that. We win Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl again. And now we have gone to, well, this guy was very talented, to, oh, he's the GOAT, because they were able to actually surround him with talent. I do think that there was a time where one guy can just go out and do it all. I think we are well past that. When you look at how the floor has raised in all sports, in terms of just overall talent and athleticism out on the field, I think when you look at how that floor has been raised, it is so hard to win with just one dude. So yes, it does seem like, in theory, in cap management, well, we're going to go spend a whole lot of money on this guy. And now because of that, he has to make a lot of people around him better. And so we are able to be a little bit chintzy on some of those things. And Denver has done it in the exact wrong ways. Kansas City did it in the exact wrong way. And the New England Patriots, for a time, did it in the exact wrong way. The next reason and the next way teams fail when it comes to building around superstars is kind of this same thing. He'll make everyone around him better, so we don't have to give him any help at all. Looking at the Jack Eichel example out in Buffalo, they made their team horrendous. It was hilarious. If you weren't around in the 14-15 season, in the lead up to that draft, it was comical. It turned into a punchline because Buffalo, if they had a goalie who would win more than 2 starts in a row, he was gone. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not by as much as you would think. It was hilarious. The amount of, like, just anyone does anything good, deuces, you out of here. Great. So then they tank, and the ping pong balls don't go exactly their way, and their GM was pissed when they didn't get Connor McDavid. Instead, they get Jack Eichel, who is also awesome. And they surround him with nothing. And now I went through, because I thought this would prove my point, to look at the line mates that he had. It looks better in retrospect because Sam Reinhart turned into a 50-goal scorer a couple of seasons ago. But you do have to remember, at the time, he is still trying to find himself a little bit. And so I forgot how long he was in Buffalo for before they pulled shoot on that. And B, what else they had around it. So again, when you look at, well, he had Reinhart to play with, that now would be an amazing duo. But back then, it kind of wasn't. And so 15-16, it was Kane and Reinhart. 16-17, it's Foligno and Reinhart. Well, I'm not a big Evander Kane fan. That's going in the wrong direction. The next year, it is Kane and Pominville. All of that's going in the wrong direction. The next year is Reinhart and Skinner. That works. Olofsson, Reinhart, and then Taylor Hall and Reinhart before eventually they pull shoot on that thing. And so they got him a little bit of help there, like going out, bringing in Taylor Hall. They were trying. To be fair to them, they were trying. But the problem was the rest of the roster was so bad that there was just, again, it kind of falls back into the Jokić thing where he can make the most out of a Reinhart-Skinner situation, but where is any help behind him? And then other examples of this. Now, Vancouver changed it as the year went on, but Elias Pettersson, for a time, there was a lot of talk about, man, they signed this guy to a contract, and he just immediately hasn't been the guy that you wanted him to be. And so you would look, and now at the end of the year, it looks a bit different because he plays with DeBrusk and Brock Besser the most of any line, and that's kind of what you needed him to do. But that was if I am remembering this correctly, that was a bit of a later in the season change. For a while, it was him with like DiGiuseppe and Garland, who are, like, Garland's fine, DiGiuseppe is okay, but if you take Pettersson out of there and put almost any other center there, that's a third line. And you're expecting, again, okay, awesome talent. We don't need to, we got him. He's going to make that line better. And we can maybe try to spread some of this stuff out a little bit. And, oh, why is he struggling? Why? I don't understand it. The same thing kind of happened in Calgary. And now, that one's a little bit different. Like, Gaudreau and Monahan fit very well together for a long time. And so you could put winger X there, and all of a sudden Yuri Hudler is shoeless at the NHL awards because he's winning NHL awards. And then you can spread the love out a little bit more. But then, oh, holy shit, you put Johnny Gaudreau with your next best player with Matthew Tkachuk, and then Elias Lindholm down the middle, and all of a sudden this team's winning a division title because of how good that line can be. I do think that there are a lot of times where it's like, wow, this guy doesn't need anyone playing with him because he's just that good, and we can spread that out the rest of the way. And then instead of having like one really dynamic line and then a little bit else, you have one line that's all right, and one line that's all right, and one line that's all right. And I feel like that's kind of happened in Vancouver, and then you're not getting the most out of this guy that you are paying the most for. Another example of this is the Toronto Blue Jays. They have Vlad Guerrero Jr., and now they're going to have Vlad Guerrero Jr. for a long time. So this part of the conversation isn't nearly as painful as it could have been for a lot of Blue Jay fans and people like that, people like me, in this conversation here today. But the thought around Vladdy is a prodigious hitter who is going to hit 350 home runs for the rest of his life. Just put those in pen and his baseball, just get the bold italicized ready on Baseball Reference and let's lock those in. And that is not the case. Now, he is a very good hitter, but he's more a 35 home runs kind of a guy. But the Blue Jays built their team as if he was going to be a monster masher for the rest of his career. And so instead of, man, let's just have a lineup that can hit the hell out of baseballs and scare everyone, it's, oh no, we got Vladdy. We're good on the power. He can carry that basically by himself. Let's fix the rest of the team. And so then you trade Teoscar Hernandez for a middle reliever, and you trade Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and for no good reason, the best catching prospect in baseball, and let's trade them for a defensive first center fielder. And then all of a sudden, you're looking up and this team's 29th in home runs and struggling to put 2 hits together in the playoffs because that's how the playoffs work. So again, you look at what you have and you say, okay, we're good. He doesn't need help. Who's helping? We don't need help there. Let's fix everything else. Like, sure, we have a team that hit almost 300 home runs and is close to setting records. And, I mean, no, they didn't make the playoffs, which is fair. But still, we have a dynamic offense that we can put out and really threaten teams. Why would we do that when we can have a bad offense and a defense thing here and a bullpen thing there? And again, if you want to do that, fine, but it better work. And Swanson, obviously, there were some real life things that went on last year, and now this year he is hurt. But that one hasn't clicked in the way that it would. And Dalton Varsho has been a fine center fielder, but he's a fine center fielder on the team you already had because he's not providing the offense that you need to offset any of the things. So defensive runs saved are great, but you need real runs scored. And the Blue Jays have been really bad at that since. And you look at it here, and like they just went 9 for 90 in a series with the Houston Astros. And again, it is because they just drained so much out of this offense, assuming this guy could carry it. And so maybe that is just the overall takeaway of all of this, is that I think sometimes front offices, when they get a superstar, it's like, okay, we're good. Box checked. Let's focus on other areas of this team. And that was a way to build a team in the 2000s, in the 80s, and stuff like that. But now, when there are so many talented players and so many very good teams, one guy isn't enough to do any of this, whether it be hockey, whether it be basketball, whether it be baseball, whether it be football. When was the last time one guy won a championship in any of those sports? I will listen to Giannis in 22, but 22, 23. Either way, I will listen to the Giannis championship year, but I still think he got some help in that series. And like Steph Curry, LeBron James, the highest of the highs, they are the reason their teams won. But make no mistake about it, they also won because Klay Thompson and Draymond Green were amazing. LeBron wins because like AD, also awesome for a little bit. And Bosh and Wade didn't hurt. Kyrie Irving also. You need to surround your guys with high-level talent still. You don't just get to check that box because Okay, we got that one now. Like you kind of need to be more the Dodgers, where it's all right. We got a superstar. What else do we need? Well, we got one. What's three? And do it that way. Like these guys actually need help these days. And it sound I can hear an older part of the sports watching population saying, well, why, like, if this guy's so great, why does he need help? Because he does. Because there's a lot of very good out there, and if you put enough very good together, it's tough for great to break through. And that is what we have seen, I think, with the Toronto Blue Jays. The last one, and the last reason why teams fail in these spots, is pure desperation. And I think the best examples of these are the LeBron James teams. And this is, in this whole conversation, I have made it very clear. I am not blaming the stars in any of it. This is the closest I will put the blame on a star, and it is not for on-court performance. Because look, I mean, say what you want about LeBron. I think we're well past looking at LeBron James's on-court contributions and thinking, oh yeah, that guy's the problem. I do remember it was a big moment, and he passed to Danielle Marshall. What is this kid doing? I think we're kind of past blaming LeBron for on-court things at this point. But his whole thing is, I'm only going to sign like 1-year deals, and it's going to keep the pressure on you to win now, win now, win now. And look, I think there's a way to do that. I just yelled at the Oilers for using all of their draft picks at a time where Connor McDavid was balling out and probably could have used a little bit more help than Kyler Yamamoto. So there is a little bit of, I guess, hypocrisy on this, but it goes too far with some of these teams because there's this pressure on. Yeah, if you have LeBron, you shouldn't be drafting in the first round. You should be trading those picks to try to make your team better. But this is where, again, that whole, well, this guy's done it before conversation comes in. And when you have that 1-year pressure, you justify everything with the, well, we need to win this year, so let's do that. Well, we need to win this year, so let's do this. And that is fine when you are making the right decision, but too often that is used to justify the wrong decision because it's, well, we just need to win, and this makes us a little bit better, so fuck it, 2 first-round picks, let's go. I think an example of it right now that isn't necessarily working out, that I kind of agreed with at the time, was the Bridges contract, or the Bridges trade with the Knicks. Whereas, yeah, I mean, 5 first-round picks, it's an overpay, but this guy could be the last piece to your championship puzzle, except he kind of isn't. And now maybe he gets a little bit better here, but this was not the season for him. And so you're looking at it and it's like you justified it because you are trying to make this push and you are trying to win this championship. And so you are win now mode. And you can say, to justify any decision, look, man, banners fly forever. If the Knicks win a title this year, yeah. But if the Knicks win a title this year, it's not going to say 2024, 2025 NBA champions, but they kind of overpaid in a trade for Mikal Bridges and really set themselves up in a poor way for the future and maybe hamstrung themselves a little bit. It's just going to say champs, man. And so, again, I have used that a ton. The problem is, it gets used for some dumbass decisions. And I brought up LeBron. Remember those last years in Cleveland where we all kind of thought he was going to stay, but it was, look, we got to take advantage of this now. We got to win with this guy now. Okay, who's out there that has won? Shaq. Shaq has won. Let's do it. How has Shaq looked recently? You shut your dirty mouth. We're getting Shaquille goddamn O'Neal. Doesn't matter how he's not great now, is he? Oh, okay. Well, okay. Who else? Oh, you know what? You know who was great? Got the fans going. He'll sell some tickets. He was on the cover of Slam magazine when that was still a thing, which I still think is a thing, but you know what I mean. This guy, a defensive dynamo. This guy was awesome. Let's get Ben Wallace. Let's do it. Incredibly limited and doesn't really fit in this league, and also lost a half a step, which, I mean, it isn't saying a whole lot because he's incredibly springy and athletic, but that was kind of the only thing he had. Well, shit. And so you just use the we have to win to justify every move that you make, and you forget to, you just run it through the filter of we need to win, and not through the filter of is this a good move? And so that is why you get things like I said, Wallace and Shaquille O'Neal and some of those moves out in Cleveland before he ends up going to Miami. And now you also got it. You kind of got the opposite of it, to be fair, with the Raptors when they had the whole Vince Carter thing going down. It's how, we're just going to, we're going to stay our course and we're not going to do anything. Now, they drafted horrendously during that time. There was a lot of reasons why they ended up in the position they were in with Vince, but they did the opposite where, no, we're good. We're just going to stay the course and it's going to be fine. And then he left and you had nothing left there before. So again, there is a balance, but this is the part of it, is that getting a superstar doesn't then mean you just get to suck at your job. You still have to find the best ways to fit around him. It isn't just, well, we need to win, so let's just do that. And it just takes all the decision making away from me because I can justify every move by saying we need to win. Or I can justify every move by saying, well, we still want pieces for the future. What are we going to do when this guy retires? Because we need to keep this together. And then you have Vince Carter leave, and your best player, with all due respect, is Jalen Rose, who, no. So that there is a balance to find with that, but it does become a little bit tricky in those. The last one where you see that desperation really hurting is the Pittsburgh Penguins, because they were trying like madmen to try to keep the window open for Sidney Crosby to try to be competitive. And it hasn't really worked for a while, if we are being honest, despite Crosby being amazing still. Everyone else has kind of fallen off, and they were able to hit for a while, right? Like they were able to find that diamond in the rough with Rust. They were able to find the diamond in the rough with Gensel. They were able to squeak together a couple of things to be able to piece some stuff in and really make this work. But then they took their last shot, and it was Erik Karlsson. And it really, even though they got some salary retention on the other side, it took away trading assets. It basically locked up their salary cap space for forever. And it put them in a spot where now there is no wiggle room for this team to try to go out and to do anything good to build around him. But again, it was a desperation move because we need to win with Sid. And so you don't factor in, hey, this was his first good year in like 5 seasons. And even during that, there were some signs that maybe it wasn't as good as it like could be, because he's on a dreadful hockey team and can kind of just style and do whatever he wants. So you don't look at the should we or shouldn't we, you just think that part of the decision making is taken away from you because it's fuck it, we have to win now. And that is where those bad decisions are made. So the real problem, and I think that kind of ties so many of these things together, is that you lose a winning process when you feel a certain type of pressure when you get a superstar player. There's a ton of pressure. And you see how different organizations in different sports handle these sorts of pressures. Look at now. We could be doing this same conversation in 5 years about the Blackhawks with Connor McDavid, because they did the rebuild thing, they tore down, and okay, we got the kid. What's next? Tyler Bertuzzi. So it is one thing. Fine. Like I am not anti-rebuild at all. I think the Flames should tear this thing down to studs-ish going into next year, because Gavin McKenna is that special. When you put up like 120 points on like a 50-game point streak, I think you're going to be pretty good when you still have another year of eligibility before the draft. But it can't just be get star player, win championship. There is a big part in the middle that so many teams screw up for all of these different reasons. Whether it's just you dumb, you feel like, okay, well, we can't spend any more money on these things, and so you become all of a sudden needlessly frugal, or you just assume box check, let's move on, and then you get to the desperation part, and it's okay, well, we just have to win, so let's get that guy. Is it a good move? Don't care, we have to win. Okay, but good moves help you win. No, winning moves help you win, and that's what this is. And that doesn't make any sense, and now you're losing again. So the main thing, again, is that teams just lose their minds, some of them, when they get this pressure. And instead of continuing with a process, continuing with a winning plan of how our organization should be run, and either what got you to the dance, in the Denver Nuggets case, in the Cleveland Cavaliers case to a certain degree, although that is kind of glossing over a little bit. Like, it was LeBron dragging a just horrendous team to an NBA Finals. But still, you lost some key parts of team building around that because, well, we have the superstar, so we have to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, you just have to build a good team. That is, it sounds very, very simple, and it is definitely easier said than done. But the easiest way to win around a superstar is just build a good team. And too often, teams get these guys and lose every sense of what it actually takes to win hockey games, basketball games, baseball games, football games in 2025. And that is why we are in this case we are in with a number of these teams right now. So that is a bit more on the ranty side today here on Couch Potato Diary. Let me know in any of the chats what you guys thought of any of this. Again, we are streaming live today on youtube.com/@Couch Potato Diary. Also, twitch.tv/primetimepk and over at kick.com/primetimepk as well. Let me know in the chats, A, where you think the Oilers have failed the most, and B, what do you think is kind of the biggest way teams screw up when they have superstar players. So all of that can serve as a cautionary tale for our next little bit here, because it is now time to talk about the NFL draft. So many interesting storylines heading into the NFL draft this season. We have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen at number 1. After that, not a clue. And that makes tonight a lot of fun. Let's share some thoughts on what's going down in the NFL draft coming up here tonight. The NFL draft is tonight, at least round 1 is, and this is such an important time of year for so many teams, and a lot of mistakes can be made. So, where will those mistakes be tonight? Let's break it all down, shall we? Just going to get the draft order here real quick. The biggest one is, I think, obvious. Let's start at number 1, and this one, it has been bantied about for a little bit. Is the right move to make the Tennessee Titans sticking and picking at 1 and getting Cam Ward? I have been back and forth on this many times. If you guys follow my football content here, you will know that we did a quarterback thing early on in the process, and I was like, look, there are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks this year. And there are not a lot of answers coming, whether it be in free agency or in the draft. And so this is where gigantic mistakes are being made. And I will say, a lot of the buzz leading into this anyway, it does give you a little bit of confidence that maybe some of these teams have figured some shit out. But all of that to bring it back around to, is Cam Ward the right pick for the Tennessee Titans at number 1? I think they are in a unique spot because I do like a little bit of how this team has kind of put things together to get that foundation, because we just did a segment there about where teams screw up so many times. It is, in football, drafting the franchise quarterback before you're ready to get that franchise quarterback. And for the Titans, I don't love where some of that money was spent in this offseason. And I do think it was one of the issues that we talked about with teams where, okay, we're getting this thing, so we just need to get an offensive lineman. That guy, well, is he worth that much? Doesn't matter. We're getting a quarterback. We need to spend money in free agency on an offensive lineman, and he's an offensive lineman. Let's spend it on him. Okay, but is this a offensive lineman? And I do think that's kind of where Tennessee fell into a little bit. But they have also used their last 2 first-round picks on offensive linemen. They very recently went out and signed Tyler Lockett, who has had some injury woes, but I think when on the field is a very reliable wide receiver. And they have kind of built things up in their offense to a way that if you put a competent quarterback, shade intended for Will Levis, you put a competent quarterback in there and they're going to be okay. And then they brought in a bunch of veterans on the defensive side. Some worked, some didn't. But I mean, look, they're picking number 1 for a reason. The team was bad last year, but I do think that they are in a spot where you can put a good quarterback in there and actually see some results pretty early on in this process. And so Daniel Jeremiah has Cam Ward as the number 10 ranked player on the board. I would generally say if you are drafting number 1 overall and taking the 10th best player in a draft, you're doing it wrong. But I do think that Cam Ward is a talented enough quarterback that it does justify this particular position. And the number 1 draft pick is a unique one where if you are trading out of that, no one's trading up at number 1 to get Abdul Carter. No one's trading up at if the Giants are moving up to number 1, they're getting Cam Ward, right? So it would be one thing to say, well, if you're not going to take the best player available, just trade out of that spot. Well, he may not be the best player available, but he is certainly the most coveted. And so that does limit your options when you are in that spot. So I do think that this is probably the right move for the Tennessee Titans. I think, like, could their defense benefit from getting Abdul Carter? Yes. 100 times yes. Would it be, I think, interesting to have a Travis Hunter on both sides of the football when you are still a team that has those needs? Yes, I do think that. And if Tennessee was drafting 2 or 3, those would be excellent picks for them. But because of the situation they are in, where that is the main piece that they are missing, and you have a kid who is good enough to warrant this pick, I do think that it makes sense for the Tennessee Titans to go with Cam Ward as the number 1 overall selection. After that, I think it gets really interesting because the Cleveland Browns, well, they went out and addressed a couple of things this offseason. They obviously have a gigantic albatross in both a like a salary cap sheet and just a team way, with Deshaun Watson being an awful person and also making an awful lot of money hanging over this team's situation right now. And so because of that, I think you can justify a few things. This is a team that has a lot of needs and not a lot of money to spend on those needs. So you could say, like, look, Shedeur Sanders, he is not the best player available for in the draft, but we kind of need a quarterback. And so if we are paying an exorbitant amount of money to Deshaun Watson and then a rookie contract to a first round pick, well, okay, that makes sense. We now have spent an average amount of money on quarterback. Hey, Toxic, hello. Thank you for popping in today. Really appreciate it. Hope the new job is treating you well. Appreciate you stopping by here today. So on the Browns, you could justify it given the team's situation of going out and getting the best quarterback available and just putting yourself in a spot where that is the that is an, like I said, it makes the cap situation a little bit easier to deal with. But you also have a bad salary cap situation, and you also have a lot of needs that you need to fill. And so there's a kid who is almost perfectly designed for Cleveland to get that. And you go out and draft Travis Hunter. I'm not saying he solves everything. And I do think that it is going to be very interesting to see how you handle a Travis Hunter, because it's one thing to go to Colorado and play cornerback and wide receiver and play 100 snaps a game. It's another to do that in the National Football League, where you're now not like there's no shade to any of the athletes that Travis Hunter was playing against, but you're not tackling a college player here. You're not tackling a future gym teacher. You're tackling DK Metcalf. And if you're drafted by Cleveland, you're now having to do it twice a year. You're having to come in and run support and try to stop Derrick Henry. You're trying to stop Lamar Jackson. That all is very wearing on the body. And so after doing that, I don't know if I want to go out there and see if I can break away from the best lockdown corners in the National Football League. So I do think that there is going to be a little bit of uniqueness in how Travis Hunter is handled. But I do also think for a team like the Browns, who are in a very bad salary cap situation, to go out and get a Travis Hunter to just kind of try to fill a couple holes at the same time actually makes a lot of sense. They're also in a good spot if they want to go with Abdul Carter and just have an elite pass rush for the next forever. And again, it's kind of the same thing as the quarterback spot. They're spending a ton of money on quarterback, so get a rookie contract in, and now you're spending an average amount on your quarterbacks. Same thing. They're paying Myles Garrett more than anyone has paid someone to do Myles Garrett's job in the history of this sport. So why not get another one on a rookie contract, and it kind of balances itself out a little bit, and now you have that elite level defense that this team was able to hang their hat on a couple of years ago. So I do think Cleveland is in an interesting spot right now, and I do think this is where the temptation of the quarterback thing really comes in, because I don't think Cleveland is a quarterback away from being a competitive team, but I do think they are a Travis Hunter away from fixing a couple of needs. And I do think they are an Abdul Carter away from at least having an identity and at least having a very, very good football team to be able to put out on the field, or at least one part of a very good football team to put out there on the field. Good. Glad that the job is going well, Toxic. That's awesome. Really, really glad to hear that. Looking at the Giants at 3, this is where things get very, very, very interesting, because you have a team that has an obvious quarterback need for the future. The Giants went out and made those signings with Russell Wilson and with Jameis Winston to try to solidify their quarterback position. And now I do think you do that so you aren't forced into a spot where you have to draft a kid, maybe ahead of where you should, as the number 3 overall pick. And so that is kind of me reading the tea leaves here a little bit, is that they just went out and made these moves so they didn't have to draft a quarterback. And again, this is a team that has a ton of holes. There is very few spots on this football team that you can look at and say, oh yeah, the Giants are set. They've made a couple of good moves this offseason, but this is still not a team that is going to be competitive with the Eagles or the Commanders in this division. And I don't think Shedeur Sanders puts them in that spot either. So the interesting wrinkle with all of this is that Daboll and Sheehan are general managing and coaching for their jobs. And I do think a big part of it is like, look, you stuck us with Daniel Jones last year. Let's get our guy in here and we can show you what we can do. And then you see how the draft order kind of plays out. And whoops. Okay, so Shedeur maybe isn't the guy that we thought he was going to be. But now, I mean, we kind of sold everything on, well, we can teach a young quarterback to do our system and we'll be good. So now, because this is their season, right? If they don't fix it this year, then those guys are out. And Sheehan, I will give you that one. Daboll, I think he's an awesome coach. The fact that he got that much out of Daniel Jones as much as he did, I think he is a really, really smart offensive mind. And I think he'd be hired like that if he got fired by the New York Giants. But there is pressure on him to do well this season. So is it enough to just get your quarterbacks in a row, draft best player available, and then maybe take a shot at it next year? Although then you're probably drafting, 8, 9, 10? And spoiler, Arch Manning isn't going to be there at 8, 9, or 10, which is kind of the apple of everyone's eye. So this is the conundrum. And I have, again, long been a don't reach on quarterbacks in the first round guy. But I do understand that there is pressure on Sheehan and Daboll. They can't just be like, okay, punt. Let's see what 15, 17 games of Tommy DeVito actually looks like. Because their jobs are on the line. And so they have to go out and put together, quite frankly, a mediocre roster so there's some improvement so they can keep their jobs. Because I do think what would be the smartest way to go about it for New York is to just be piss poor this season. And it wastes another year of Malik Neighbors, and I understand that. But be real bad this year, get the number 1 overall pick and be able to control your destiny that way. Doesn't always work. See Panthers, Carolina. But you are able to at least control things that way. But they are in a unique position where Daboll and Sheehan can't do that. So they had to address the quarterback spot. Now, that does, I think, leave them in a position here where they just take best player available. If we are assuming Ward goes 1, then we are assuming one of Carter or Hunter goes 2, and you just take the other one. You have wide receiver set, I will grant you. If it is Travis Hunter, that is a really good kind of 1-2 there. And the defensive backs for the Giants, not spectacular, but you could use an upgrade in that area. Abdul Carter, I do think that a lot of the focus for the Giants is on the offensive side right now because of how putrid that it was. And so I do think a pass rusher is a bit of a tough sell to New York. But if you are getting an elite one and a guy who is a game changer, we have seen how that can turn franchises around very, very quickly. So I do think the smart move for the Giants is to just take Carter or Hunter and run and just go with that. But there is this little thing in the back of my mind that's like, man, like, it's one thing to sign Wilson and Winston, but if you think Shedeur is going to fit in your system, neither of those guys are good enough that it's like, well, we can't possibly now. We signed Russell Wilson in 2025. So they're in a really interesting position. The Patriots at 4 are just kind of hoping someone reaches, right? They are either hoping that the Giants or Browns trade out of that spot to allow someone to come in at 2 and take Shedeur Sanders 2 or 3, which the way all the tea leaves are going doesn't seem like that's the move right now because no one's really beating down the door for Shedeur. Like I saw, we got the rhyme there, but I saw Daniel Jeremiah's most recent mock draft here. I don't have it in front of me now, but it had Shedeur actually going behind Jackson Dart and going to the Steelers down at 21. That would be, I mean, wow. And so for the Patriots, it does kind of feel like this draft and the draft process broke in a way that is kind of anti to what they needed. Because if someone reaches at 2 or 3 for Shedeur, if 2 quarterbacks go in the first 3 picks, then the Patriots have an opportunity to get to the best or second best player in this draft, in either Hunter or Carter, whoever is left. And that is just a monumental moment for the franchise to have Drake May as your guy and then to have cornerstone piece either as Abdul Carter or in Travis Hunter as well. The problem is it really doesn't seem like it's going to fall that way. So where now do the Patriots go at 4? I think is going to be fascinating. And so a lot of times you will see like, oh, well, the draft really starts at blah, 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 blah. The draft really starts here. I mean, I think honestly, the draft starts at 2. If Cleveland or the Giants just want to get freaky and go out and get a quarterback, then everything shifts and it becomes a real big kind of pivot point here. But if they stick with just, okay, let's just go best player available, it's Travis Hunter. Let's get Travis Hunter. Let's do that. And then if they go, the Giants go Abdul Carter, where are you going now? Will Campbell is the next one that's kind of available, and that's where Daniel Jeremiah has the Patriots going is Will Campbell. The thing that is really funny about that whole conversation is, yes, the Patriots need offensive line help, and it is not a sexy pick. You're not putting Will Campbell on the ticket stubs for the season ticket holders for the upcoming season, but Drake May needs time. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback, but he does need some help on the offensive line. If you draft an offensive lineman at 4, you are presuming that you are getting that help. So it is a position of need. The issue, Will Campbell, according to his combine measurements, would have, I think, the 3rd shortest arms of any left tackle in the NFL. And now sometimes outliers work. Right? Sometimes it's like, I don't care how long his arms are. If he's still positionally good and if he can manage, he can manage. If the traits are what they are, we can figure it out and we can coach him into a thing. And that's fine. But they obviously thought it was a problem because all of a sudden at his, the Big 12 Pro Day? Well, it couldn't be Big 12 Pro Day. That'd be weird. He's at LSU. But at the LSU Pro Day, all of a sudden his arms extended a few more inches. And hey, look at, not a few more inches, but an extra inch. And then he went from in that outlier column to not in that outlier column, which it's hilarious that 1 inch can do that, and insert your joke there. But that kind of stuff is important when you are dealing with Myles Garrett coming off of the edge. And you are dealing with, like, for the Patriots, if they draft Will Campbell, he's dealing with Bosa. If you're dealing with that a couple of times a year, you don't want to be dealing with, well, his arms are short, but he can get there in a quick way, because you kind of got to be able to reach out and do that immediately, right? So it makes, like, all of it makes sense. Patriots need an offensive lineman, draft an offensive lineman. Except there is a very real world where that dude ends up being a guard in a few years. And looking at the not just Daniel Jeremiah, but the NFL draft kind of best player available or draft board, I guess. This guy is about 13th. 12 or 13th best player available. And so now again, you are reaching in a big way. Now, Daniel Jeremiah has him as the 9th best player available. So again, it's a need. It fits way more than some of the other guys who are available does, but that is such a boom or bust pick for the Patriots at a time where they really, like, you go from almost having a sure thing to now look, if this hits, it's the exact thing we need, but the odds of it being a hit are actually quite a bit smaller than not. So, That's concerning right now. So I think, are in a very interesting spot at number 4. I'm not going to go through and do an in-depth breakdown of all of these teams. I just think the top ones are very fascinating, because then you're at Jacksonville and you're kind of in the same situation where Jacksonville, like, they're pretty sure they got the quarterback. I still think they got the quarterback, but it's a big year for Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think they did him any favors in free agency. They continue to, we did again earlier. If you're not watching the live stream and just watching this as its own video on YouTube, we did earlier a breakdown of where teams go wrong with star players. And Jacksonville has checked like 3 of those boxes of just general incompetence, bringing the wrong people around him at the wrong time, mismanagement of the salary cap, and also just an assumption that, oh, this guy's going to be awesome, so we can just draft whoever and put whoever at wide receiver because we got the quarterback and we'll be fine. They have a good pass rush, or at least good players on the pass rush. But aside from that, there isn't one spot where you can say, nah, man, they're good. So is this an area where you go Ashton Genty? Because a lot of people have him as the best player available in the 2025 NFL draft. Daniel Jeremiah has him as the 3rd best player in this draft. And so again, if you're drafting the 3rd best player in the draft at 5, boy, that seems to be a really smart thing to do. That being said, it's a deep running back draft. And the New York Giants drafted Saquon Barkley, 2nd, 3rd overall. And through no fault of Saquon Barkley's, who is awesome, as we established, the team didn't really get very far, because you don't need to be using these high of resources on those types of players. So there's, again, it seems like an obvious, okay, we'll just get best player available. Okay, well, here's the best player available. Well, it's at a position we can maybe get in the 2nd round. And, I don't know if this one really makes sense for us right at this particular moment in time. So it just seems like, okay, best player available, great. But it's not a position that is a high leverage one that you really should be taking at number 5 overall. So you just have a lot of different questions with each of these picks where it seems obvious what they need, except for where their franchise is at, or except for how the draft board has kind of fallen to them. I think the other big stories in this draft are going to be, look, there are a lot of interesting teams right now. Like, you could run through every team and be like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. And just kind of do it that way. But I think the next one is obviously the Shedeur Sanders conversation, because if he doesn't go to Cleveland at 2, if he doesn't go to the Giants at 3, he's certainly not going to the Patriots at 4. It would be the shocker of all shockers if he went to the Jags at 5, and then the fall starts. But you can also justify it for a few of these teams. Like the Raiders, they just went out and traded for Geno Smith. Didn't give up a lot for him, signed him to a contract, but it's not a gigantic contract by quarterback standards. Also, I don't think Shedeur Sanders is a day 1 quarterback anyway in the NFL. I think you're going to need to redshirt him for a little bit. And so if you have a Geno Smith who is established, you have a coaching staff that is, I think, established in Vegas right now with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. Like, those guys are set in their whatever. There isn't going to be that pressure to bring that kid in and play him in the first or 2nd games of the season. And so you can allow him to sit on your bench, learn from Geno Smith, learn from Pete Carroll, learn from Chip Kelly, and figure out the National Football League so that when he is your guy in maybe a year or 2, that he can come in and be ready to go immediately. I think that's the best situation for a Shedeur Sanders right now. I think that is the best spot, best type of a spot for him to go into. The issue for the Raiders, again, because you can do this with almost every team, Vegas has a number of needs if they want to be better next year. They have a coach who's 80 and isn't necessarily going to be looking for, 5 years down the road, what are we going to be? And you have a team that needs a lot right now, and quarterback isn't one of them. They got quarterback set. Geno Smith is a good quarterback. They need help on the offensive line. Jacoby Myers is their number 1 wide receiver. Now, their number 1 pass catcher is Brock Bowers, who's awesome. But they need wide receiver help. They lost a couple very good players in free agency. Now, they've made some smart moves in free agency as well, but they have some needs in this draft. And so it feels like a bit of a waste to then use one of your first round picks to not address one of those needs and double down on, I'm not going to say a strength, because I don't know if Geno Smith is at that point in his career, but to draft a position that is just a check mark for you. But then again, quarterback and quarterback of the future is a difficult thing to find. So I think a lot of people are just assuming the Raiders are out on Shedeur, but I do think with Tom Brady's relationship with this particular player, also that, like, I got Tom Brady in the building, not on Sundays because he's got another job, but I got Tom Brady in the building for a lot of these games. A pretty good mentor for Shedeur Sanders to sit under for a year. So I do actually think the Raiders would be, while I homer pick for sure, I do actually think the Raiders would be in a good spot to draft Shedeur Sanders here and then hope that the rest of the draft does kind of just fall your way a little bit and hope that you can maybe address some of those other things as this draft kind of goes along. Looking at where the Raiders are picking the rest of the way, I don't know why it is taking this long. There we go. They have picks in every round. They have the 37th overall pick, 68, 108, 143, 3 picks in the 6th, and then 1 pick in the 7th round. And so I am not saying, yeah, just figure out the rest of your team in the 2nd through 7th round, but I do think that there is an interesting opportunity for this team to get a quarterback that there is an upside on. Get a quarterback under Tom Brady's tutelage that has a lot of the limitations that Brady had. Probably not the upside of greatest of all time, but still an upside, while also dealing with, again, the limitations that he had and how he can maximize it while not having to go in day one because you have an established veteran there and people aren't going to be calling for his job if the team goes 1-2 in the first few weeks. If he doesn't go to the Raiders, you can almost say a lot of that same stuff for the Jets. Where the Jets, I do think they have a good roster in place. Not as good as we thought it was a season ago. There are some holes on this team, but they do have a good roster. And they have the quarterback kind of set right now in Justin Fields. This wouldn't be a bad spot to, again, get your quarterback of the future and see how he can kind of develop along, but with an understanding that you are still picking 7th for a reason, and there are a few holes on this team that you still need to address. So that would be a good spot, and then the fall would really start, I think, for Shedeur, because the Panthers don't need it. The Saints, it feels like a lot of people are just attaching them to Jackson Dart right now, and, I mean, they are a quarterback-needy team. I don't know if they are the team that should be going out and getting Shedeur, because with Derek Carr's injury, they're going to need a guy to play day one. And I don't think Shedeur is that guy. Now, I don't know if Jackson Dart is either. I think Jackson Dart is a little bit more in the Will Levis thing, and there are a lot of obvious reasons why you can make comparisons to those guys. But the way that I am comparing them, I guess, isn't the most flattering to either Nix or Dart, is that Dart is more of a finished product now. Shedeur, there's a lot of developing that he still can do. There are a lot of characteristics that lead you to believe that he can be a very good quarterback. He was also just under siege all year, all career, really, at Colorado, because they never had an offensive line there. And while, yes, you had Travis Hunter to throw to, that was kind of it. So he didn't have a whole lot to work with at Colorado. Still got that Colorado team into some very good spots, again, with some help, but not as much help as you would assume. And so that there's a lot of developing that he could do. Jackson Dart, when you look at him at the Senior Bowl and you watch his game tape throughout the year, it's a bit more of a finished product. So you're not getting that ceiling, but I can start him day one and I'm not necessarily too worried about it right now. He checks that college experience box that a lot of people are looking for. So if they go Dart over Shedeur there, then Bears don't need a quarterback. 49ers, God, that would be funny. Oh yeah, we got Brock Purdy contract. Don't care. You're gone. Another rookie quarterback bringing it in. That would be a fun one. That would be a really, really interesting debate to have, because Brock Purdy has been great. And this would be Shanahan and Lynch doubling down on Shanahan being a quarterback guy. I'm not in the least bit suggesting that this is the way to go. But this team has a lot of holes, and they just got bled dry in free agency. It seems like a bad time to be giving out a gigantic contract for your quarterback. And look, Brock Purdy is a significantly better quarterback right now than Shedeur Sanders is. And also, though, I think Shedeur at this point was probably better than Brock Purdy was at this point. And I do think that Shedeur isn't going to be a guy who just rests on, 11th overall pick. I'm good, baby. I think that given While he is someone who obviously comes from wealth, right, and probably a lot of it with Deion Sanders, say a lot about Deion. That the guy loved to flaunt the prime time and all of that. There is also a work ethic that guy had to be able to play two positions in football and then baseball in the World Series, and just being an annoyance to the Toronto Blue Jays. But that's another one for another time. So I think that this kid will work on the things that he needs to work on. It would be a move. Oh, that would be so much fun. If San Francisco is just like, yeah, we can't really afford to sign Brock Purdy right now because we have to fill almost every position on the football field. So, you know what? Who wants him? Who wants Brock Purdy? A lot of quarterback needy teams out there. Bring us your offers. We're going to draft Shedeur. We're going to trade Brock Purdy. And we're going to get probably a few assets for him, have a bunch of future money we didn't think we were going to have, and now we can start to fill these holes that way. God, it's not going to happen, but that would be such a fun development if San Francisco was just like, fuck it, man, let's roll with it. Dallas, that would be, you could see them doing something like that, but I don't think they will. Miami, I mean, honestly, maybe should, but definitely wouldn't. Colts, kind of the same thing with Anthony Richardson. We're getting into more of the territory here, but the obvious is if he falls down to Denver, right? Like Atlanta's not doing it, Arizona's not doing it, Cincinnati is not doing it. Seattle, again, maybe should, but has more holes to fill. Tampa Bay's definitely not doing it. Denver's certainly not doing it. So then it gets down to the Steelers at 21. And now again, it puts them in a spot where it makes a ton of sense to draft Shedeur Sanders there. The problem is you are now again throwing him in there day one. And you're not throwing him in there day one for the Saints, who, all due respect, don't have a lick of expectations. This is a team that, under Mike Tomlin, has always gone over their win total and has always made it over 500. And do they always make the playoffs? I mean, they make it quite a bit. Do they always win in the playoffs? Almost never, recently. But there is still an expectation that you are going to go in and you are going to be competitive. And now you have to go be competitive with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. You get a couple games against Cleveland, which is nice. But, I mean, then you have to face Myles Garrett. So you are getting thrown into the wolves very quickly if that is the way the Steelers go. And so it makes a ton of sense. A lot of people are linking the two together. But I still think that Pittsburgh would need to go out and sign a quarterback. It just couldn't be Aaron Rodgers at that point. Like, that would be, and I don't know if he would go for it, but I mean, at this point, what else is he going to do? That would be a Kirk Cousins spot, right? To kind of bank this season on Kirk Cousins being a year removed now from that injury and seeing how a few guys have kind of developed out of that, to go in, just shore up that position for a year and hope that Shedeur develops in the next year or develops by the time Kirk Cousins' legs fall off. I think that is probably, it's the biggest storyline of this draft and kind of seeing how it goes. Obviously the most fun is San Francisco. That is the most chaos. I think the draft changes significantly if it is the Giants that take him. Like, you look at all the different dominoes that would fall if the Giants take him. So let's say it's Cam Ward 1, the way a lot of people are expecting, and let's say Travis Hunter 2, like a lot of people are expecting. At 3, Shedeur Sanders. Giants, again, you can squint, make it work, whatever. At 4, it is Abdul Carter, and it is insulting to every other draft prospect in that room how quickly the Patriots run that card up there. They don't, like, they just prick their finger and write it in blood because they don't have time to get a pen and click it on or to type a name in. It is, we just have to get this in as quickly as possible. Abdul Carter, go. And then, how does the rest of the draft fall? Because now all of a sudden, Will Campbell, who we just laid out, there are some limitations with this particular player. But he is also, I believe, the highest rated offensive lineman on Daniel Jeremiah's board. Jacksonville, I would assume, wouldn't mind having that type of a player. Now all of a sudden, Genty, who a lot of people have going to Jacksonville, becomes available for the Raiders, who I think would run that pickup given who their coaching staff is. And so it sets this domino up now. All of a sudden, Kelvin Banks, who might have been reached on a little bit, it still might be a reach for the Jets, but now they have an opportunity. And so that is the domino that really crashes this back down. It makes the Patriots an automatic winner of the draft. It sets up a few teams in ways that are really beneficial to them, and it causes a little bit of chaos. But if Shedeur keeps falling, there are a few teams who are going to have quite a few honest conversations about what they really have. So I am so excited for the draft here. this year. Again, I think you can probably tell by just like how much I'm rambling on about all these different scenarios. I think the NFL draft is uniquely set up in this way because of, like, in basketball, the guys can come in and start right away, but I mean, there's only 12 positions to fill, and really like 5, and then only a few of them are going to make an impact in the immediacy, right? And then as you go down, it's like bench player and stuff like that. In baseball, it takes years, and now that's shortening, but it takes years for these kids to come in and make an impact on these teams. So that one gets a little bit boring. Hockey, it's kind of the same thing. The top 2 really do have an opportunity to make an impact, and we are seeing that again, that gap is kind of shortening as kids get better and better coming out of whether it be college or major junior hockey, or the U.S. development program, which has taken a real step. I mean, all of it, right? Like the Europe too. Like, I don't need to single any area out, but still, while it is fun and we like to talk about it, and there are certainly tiers, it's still a few of these kids are going to make an impact here. In football, you have 22 starting positions that you get to fill, and there are a bunch of kids who are starter worthy immediately. Like, talking about around 100 of them that can be ready to start almost immediately. And then you have the high pressure of the NFL and every different way that goes. So I just think the NFL one is just the most interesting draft, and I am excited for it tonight. I will say, again, I am working tonight, so I'm not going to be able to do anything live coming out of the draft tonight. So that is, that I've done it before in the past, not going to be able to this time. Just, I mean, if you're in Calgary, come see me at Bitter Sisters, but no. But I will hopefully do something either on the weekend, or certainly we'll break it all down on Monday, but I'm going to be on Sportsnet 960 The Fan coming up on Friday, so the Friday video might just be like a quick one and certainly not going live. That is going to do it for the show today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Toxic, glad the job is doing well, sir. Thank you so much for popping in today. Deeds, yes, we all enjoyed another Edmonton loss there. If you missed any of this, this show is available in podcast form. You can get it on Spotify. You can also get it over on Apple Podcasts. If you are listening to this after the fact, you can get these episodes live. We do this on YouTube. Just check out youtube.com/@CouchPotatoDiary. If you liked it, give it a like. If you really liked it, a subscription would be awesome. I just stole a thing from a guy who used to employ me. I shouldn't have done that. But either way, I would really appreciate the subscriptions. A like on this, a comment about what you thought from this video. I would really, really appreciate that. Again, if you're listening, you can get these live as they are happening. Also, if you are listening, would love to get some reviews going up again and getting that kind of rolling. So leave a review, leave a rating. That stuff really does help. Follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein, basically everywhere on the socials. Thank you all so much for hanging out today. We got one more stream, and it's going to be coming up here in a little bit. I've kind of spaced them out at times before, but I've really enjoyed we got some really good video game streams on the go right now. So I think we're going to take like a half-hour break. Basically, I'm just going to change my setup up, and we are going to jump back on the video game train. We got some important hockey games to be playing, so we're going to do that one today, I believe. So we're going to do the hockey video game stream coming up at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. We'll talk some Stanley Cup playoffs there. We didn't get into a whole lot of the specifics on the show today, so we'll talk some playoffs and get the stream going at 1 o'clock. So see you guys in just a little bit. And for the rest of you, have a great rest of your day.